And welcome back. With the game plan from our previous video fresh in our minds, let's go ahead and build the topology in the interface for EVE-NG. And the reason I'm being meticulous about showing you these steps and what I'm using is because I want you to be able to recreate this if you want to build a home lab to practice yourself. So with the username and password provided and the native console selected, we'll click sign in. All right, and I've got a bunch of labs over here, but we're going to create a brand new one. So I'll click on this icon right here, add new lab. And I'm going to call this I Love Palo Alto. Because I do. All right, and we'll click on save. All right, so we have pretty much a blank slate to start with here. And what we're going to do is there's several ways of adding objects. One way is just to right click. And if you want to add a node, that'd be the thing like a switch or a router or a computer or a firewall. You click on node. So I'm going to click on node. Now it's asking me, what do I want to install? So currently this represents all those folders that I have over on my EVE-NG virtual machine. This represents each of those folders. And behind those, in each of those folders, I've got the images to support it. Our purpose here is Palo Alto. So we'll go to the Palo Alto, which is based on that folder name. And here, because I only have one image for that, that's the only image available. So I'll go ahead and choose that Palo Alto 10.0.0, which is reflective of that sub interface I made over on the EVE-NG virtual machine. And then how many do we want to add? Because I need two, I'm just going to make it easy. I'm going to choose two right now. And then for the name, I want to call these PA-F. And then I can't leave like that. We'll put FX. And then we'll just swap it out for the two different firewalls. We'll call one PA Firewall 1, and we'll call one PA Firewall 2. Let's do that. So I'll start off with that. It'll add a 1 and a 2 automatically. Very handy. And then for the icon, I'm just going to use the Palo Alto icon because it's already available. So we'll just use it. And then I'm going to scroll down. Now, if you are on limited resources on your ESXi host and the EVE-NG virtual machine, you may want to use some of the bare minimums that are needed. But in my case, I've got plenty to burn. So I'm going to give each of the Palo Alto firewalls 4 CPUs and 8 gigs of RAM. And then for Ethernet adapters, I'm going to go ahead and give it 8. That way we'll have plenty of interfaces to play with bump in the wire, layer 3, layer 2, anything we want to do, we'll have plenty of interfaces. And then for the network interface card, the TPL E1000 works. I've used that. However, what's currently being recommended for this virtual machine is the Vertio-Net-PCI. So I'm going to choose that. Also, I'm going to scroll down just a little bit more. And instead of getting a console via VNC, I want a console via Telnet. And I tweaked my EVE-NG environment just a little bit so that when I click on a machine that's supporting Telnet, it opens up secure CRT for me to that host immediately. And the behavior of that changes also a little bit based on the interface you're using for EVE-NG, whether it's the native or the HTML5. So currently I'm using the native console, and with those in place, let me just check my work here. I've got 2 firewalls coming in. They both have 4 CPUs. They both have 8 gigs of RAM and 8 interfaces. The NIC is Vertio-Net-PCI, and the console access is going to be Telnet. Looks good to me. Click on save. And there they are. So we just took my name and put a 1 in front of the first one, then 2 in front of the other one. So if we wanted to rename these, we could right click if they're powered off. Right click, click on edit, and we could go in and modify the settings of that one. All right, so let's go ahead and move these around just a little bit to make it look like our network diagram. So there's firewall 1 and firewall 2. Excellent. And let's add some networks. So I'm going to right click and click on network right here to add a new network object. In fact, I want 2 of them. And I'm going to call these 192 to begin with, and then I'll rename them. But these are both going to be connected to my 192 network. I want to specify the icon not as a desktop, but rather let's go for a cloud. I'll go for a small cloud. And then the type, I'm going to go ahead and specify as management. Now, there's more than one way to do this as well. However, if we specify management cloud, that effectively is bridging to the interface that the EVE-NG VM is connected to, which happens to be my home network, which is the 192.168.1 network. So I'm going to use management. I'm going to get 2 of those, click on save, and there they are. They're stacked on top of each other. So I'm going to click away and then just click one of them and drag it. There we go. So I'm going to rename these. Right click, edit. I'm going to call this first one management -192, and that way I'll remember what it is. So there's our management network that we can use for managing, and also I want this one to represent the internet, as we discussed in our previous video. So I'm going to click on edit. I'm going to call this internet, because off of this cloud, there's another default gateway or default router at .1 which does lead off with Nat and Pat off to the real internet. In fact, let me change the icon for this as well. We'll go to Edit, and instead of a cloud for that, let's go ahead and use a globe. I'm going to choose Globe 2. And that way, it kind of looks and feels like the internet. All right, that works. All right, so there's management, there's the internet, and we need a cloud for the 23 network. So we'll right-click. We're going to add another network. And this one we're going to call 23.1.2.0. It doesn't like spaces in the names, so use underscores or dashes or periods. Don't use spaces. And I would like a picture of another cloud. So we'll go ahead and grab cloud. And for the type, we'll click on type and then go down to private. So basically anybody connected to this network is going to have connectivity with other devices on that network, which is perfect for our needs. So it's going to be a private network. We'll click on save, and there it is. And while we're here, we can connect them. So to connect the firewall, so we'll drag the connector over there. We'll specify we want 1/3 and save. And for firewall 2, we'll click and drag, and we'll want to use its 1/3 as its outside interface. So at the moment, these interfaces don't have names, but based on what the names will be, those are the outside interfaces, or will be the outside interfaces from the firewall's perspective. Now, what else do we need? Oh, we need the 10.1 network on the left. So let's right-click. We'll add a new network. And this is going to be, we're going to label it 10.1.0.0. And to be clever, let's go ahead and just see, there you go. Switch to, this is a layer 2 switch. We'll use a switch icon, and we'll have that be yet another private network. In fact, we're going to need one over for the other side. Let me make 2, and I'll just modify one of them. So I'm going to make 2 new networks. Click on save. I need to change the names anyway. So let me right-click, edit, and because I made 2, it messed up my numbering. So we'll call this 10.1.0.0. Click on save, and this other one we're going to call it 10.2.0.0. So we'll right-click, edit, and it'll be 10.2.0.0. Fantastic, and save. All right, then we'll connect PA2 to its internal network, and we're going to use interface 1/1. So here it's saying Ethernet. So just realize that the Ethernet is just a representation of that interface. And so in the GUI and at the CLI, I believe those interfaces are all going to show up as gigabit. So we'll choose 1/1, click on save. We'll do the same thing over here on firewall 1, going to its inside, which is the 10.1 network, using the 1/1 interface. Click on save. All right, and we are making progress for our lab. Also, let's connect these firewalls to the management network. So to do that, we'll click on the link for network connectivity, drag over to the management network, and for the interface there, we want to use literally the management interface on these firewalls. So we'll choose the management interface, click on save, and then we'll repeat that for firewall 2. We'll click on the icon for connectivity, drag over to the management network, and we want, once again, to use the management interface on firewall 2. Click on save. All right, and also I'm going to change the link just for a little bit. I'm going to right-click on that link. I'm going to click on Edit Style, and let's click on Dashed, and also change the color maybe. So I'm just going to take this and drag this over, make it reddish or more reddish. And then for the link style, let me use Bezier. All right, and let's repeat that over for this link over here as well. That way when we see it, we'll know, oh, that's just a management connection. That's not part of the data plane. So we'll click on Edit Style. We'll go for Dashed. We'll change the color. We'll change the link style to Bezier, and we'll click on Save. All right, I don't think I got the color. Let me go back and Edit Style one more time. Oh yeah, I messed up on the color. All right, boom. There we go. Everything looks good. Click on Save. So now if we move the management cloud around, we can have it so we can still see what's going on. And we'll know that's the management connections, and then here's the internet. And let's add our router for connectivity to the real internet off of our lab network here. And to do that, we are going to add one more device in. We'll right-click, select node from the drop-down, and let me see if I have Vios on here. I don't have Vios, but I do have a Cisco router that I can use. So I'm going to choose a Cisco iOS router. I'm going to call it R1, and it has 4 interfaces, and for access, it's Telnet. That sounds good, and we'll click on Save. So then I'll go ahead and let me give full connectivity to the internet from our home lab. So here from the 23.1.2 network, we can have a NAT/PAT router out to the real internet. So I'm going to go ahead and take R1 and connect it to the 23.1.2 network. I'm going to use gig 0/1 for that. Click on Save, and then out to the outside world, which is here. All right, so here we have gig 00. I want to use that. I'm click on Save. So now this router has gig 01 connected to our lab pseudo internet, but it's also providing connectivity to the real internet. So we'll make gig 00 like a DHCP client. It'll get an IP address and default route from the outside world, and then it can provide NAT and PAT services and routing out to the real internet. Oh, what happened to our management link over here? Oh, I must have a crazy mouse. So I'm going to right click on that management connection, edit style. I want it dashed. I want the color to be that. And I want it Bezier and save. All right, so that's quite a bit. Looking at this, I'm thinking, oh, we're still missing a couple things. We need some hosts, some client PCs on each site. One at headquarters site or the 10.1 network, one at site 2 or the 10.2 network. And we have a few easy options for clients, and let me show you those right now. All right, so we need some clients. And so depending on what you have already set up in EVE-NG, one of the easiest ways just for basic connectivity testing is to right click and go to Node. And then from here, from the drop down, there's the virtual PC simulator. It doesn't have a browser though, that's the challenge. So if you just want to test basic connectivity, it's a win for that. So we'll go ahead and I'm just gonna call it VPC. Click on save, then we can connect that. So and then we'll connect that to our 10.1 network. It only has one interface, we'll use it. However, if we want to have a browser and be able to actually send traffic to websites and stuff like that, we pretty much want a real machine that we can use for that purpose. So I'm going to right click and click on Node. And so in my EVE-NG, I've got some options for Windows and Windows Server, but another option, which is pretty easy to set up and really low overhead, is Docker. So if we use Docker IO, and again, the settings for getting that integrated with EVE-NG is directly on their website. And for the image, I'm going to choose this one right here, eve-GUI-server latest. So that GUI server effectively has a nice graphical user interface that we can use. It's got a CLI we can use. It's got a browser we can use. It can be a DHCP client, so it's wonderful. So that's what I'm going to use for my lab. So eve-GUI-server latest, click on that. And as far as how much RAM and so forth, I'm going to choose the defaults. And for console, RDP, which is fine for that. And we'll click on save. In fact, I should have made 2 of those because we could use one at the other side as well, but we'll pop that in later. Oh, I want to change the icon too. So right click, edit, and I want the icon to look more like a client. So let's see if there's a laptop. That would be under L's, Keith. There we go. So I'm going to choose the laptop icon and then click on save. All right, and then we'll go ahead and connect that into our 10.1 network using the only interface available on that little virtual machine. Click on save. And I'm also going to change the name. I meant to do that as well. Right click, edit, and we'll go ahead and call this guy client-1 and press enter. All right, and we could also have a client 2 over here on the right-hand side. We can just bring that in when we need it. Another big element that we need to configure in our lab environment as far as infrastructure is routing. In this case, it's R1. So you may be using Vios or Juniper or something else for your routing function. That's all good. For the demo in the next video, I'd like to walk you through setting up the NAT and PAT services and the routing on a Cisco router, but the concepts are going to be the same. But we need that infrastructure in place for our lab environment if we want full internet connectivity from our clients. So in the next video, I'll walk you through setting up R1 to set up translation services on a Cisco iOS router. Until then, I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.